Yeah, because if they want to, they want to do they want to, right?
Good evening. I'd like to call the Tuesday, September 3rd, 2014 meeting to order. If everyone would please rise and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance with me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Real quick, before we can roll call, I'd like to introduce our newest member to the Planning Commission, Mr. Austin. Welcome. With that, we'll start roll call on my right. Gilmore here. Barber here.
Kimsey here.
Mater here.
Lavella here.
Limer here.
Austin here.
Quorum is present. Moving to the consent agenda. All matters listed within the consent agenda have been distributed to each member of the Planning Commission for study. These items are to be routine and will be enacted upon by one motion with no separate discussion. If separate discussion is desired on an item from either the Planning Commission or from the floor, that item may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. Are there any items any members of the Commission would like to have removed from the consent agenda? Are there any items any member of the public would like to have removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda made by Kimsey with a second by Gilmore. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with all in favor. Moving on to new business item CUP-14-02, conditional use permit for public utilities. Hold a public hearing for and consider a proposed conditional use permit to allow for an odor control facility in the R1 single-family district on approximately 0.0 acres of property located on the southeast side of the intersection of Gardner Lake Road 2 Street and Gardner West Road, tax ID CF 221411-3081, submitted by Shannon Mathis of Johnson County Wastewater, John and Cynthia Hubbard, property owner of record. We have a fast presentation.
Can you speak up just a little bit?
Oh, I'm
It's
sorry.
real hard to hear you.
I sure can. Is that any better?
That's better.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Travis Hulse, planner. We have before us tonight a conditional use permit application, as stated, for a public utility, specifically an odor control station. The proposed odor station is in correlation with some of the improvements that are going to be going on around Gardner Lake to support a low-pressure sewer system. It's a part of an improvement project that the county is doing in order to improve some of the existing septic systems that currently support the residents and private property owners out there. The area shown here in red is along the Gardner West Road and south of Lake Road 2 Street, is within Gardner city limits and is therefore subject to the criteria stated in our procedures. It's a part of a .06 acre development and is in very close proximity to both the Gardner Lake and golf course, both of which are owned by the city of Gardner, and single-family residences as well. An overview of the project as provided by the applicant. This is the total site that exists for improvements that are to be constructed if approved by the Planning Commission and governing body. It will take place within a permanent easement that has been recorded with Johnson County, and specifically to the bottom right is provided a picture of what this might look like visually, and the facility itself is not seen in this picture. We'll get to that here in a little bit, but this is the vinyl fences to surround the pump station. There's also, and here is the pump station highlighted in blue, there is also a part of this odor control facility, an underground storage tank that will not be seen and is to hold the chemicals that will treat the sewage in order to prevent any release of foul-smelling odors, both at the pump site and some of the air release valves throughout the entire low-pressure system. In addition to the odor control facility itself, the applicant has also provided landscaping to help screen and minimize any of the impact that might be brought to nearby properties and owners of the area around Gardner Lake. And there is also going to be a designated parking and drive area so as to prevent any traffic issues, and allowing them to provide general maintenance at the facility and inspection and other things that they will be able to do. Procedurally, staff is following the Kansas state statute, similar to a rezone request, that criteria is listed within Gardner Municipal Code that we would analyze these applications by. And I'm going to focus on a number of those criterion that are relevant to this application. A complete analysis has been provided in the staff report that has both been made available to you as well as the public and posted online. Criteria A suggests that it be in conformance with the comprehensive plan, and to what extent staff feels that it reaches that. Within policy 2.5 of the community development plan, there is a specified requirement for locational criteria to be utilized when placing utility structures in a single-family rural residential area. This image that you see here is taken from the community development plan, showing the land uses as rural residential that would apply to this type of proposed project. The applicant has studied and determined that this specific site selected is suitable not only for functionality purposes but also to minimize any impact on adjacent properties, allowing the station to be located further from some of the residents and within an area that already has some natural screening by landscape and vegetation that's already in place, and we'll be adding to that as well to further support anything that might impact the nearby properties. This is the location highlighted in red where the improvements are to take place. Again, this is a public utility. It's something similar to substations or other utility areas that are required in order to support infrastructure that is placed for public use and improvements. It will be, again, additionally screened with fencing and landscaping to minimize the visibility from adjacent properties. Specifically, the applicant has proposed 10 bushes and 6 trees in addition to the vegetation shown here in this image, albeit not alive. It, in fact, will be during the construction. The public utility, again, similar to other equipment, staff does not feel that this proposed use will negatively affect nearby properties and is compatible in the way that it has been proposed to minimize any effect. Criteria H asks if the capacity and safety of the road network is maintained. So the proposed parking and drive area will allow for, again, general maintenance to occur and inspection of the facility. They will need to refill the underground storage tank, and has been explained to staff that that would happen generally once a week, that they would need to access the site for no longer than maybe 15 to 60 minutes at a time. So it's nothing that's going to create a large amount of additional traffic to the area, and when they are there, they will make sure to utilize the parking and drive areas. And it's been asked by staff that in order for that to be met, that all vehicular access and maintenance and inspection of the facility shall only take place within these designated parking and drive areas, so as to prevent any sort of vehicles being parked on the private streets and causing any sort of issues for residents accessing their homes in the lake as well. Criteria I is directed towards any potential pollution or environmental harm that this proposed use might create. The chemical storage facility located underground, as well as the pump station, the pump cabinet that is shown here. So this is what is located within the vinyl fencing, and is within a locked, double wall protected area, so that if any leaks are to occur, they will be contained within the system. They also will have a detection and be able to tell if any leaks have happened, and may not visibly be obvious. They can be aware of any sort of spills or leaks at that point in time. The chemical in general is not assumed to be hazardous at all as well. So there's certainly procedure in place to protect the environment, especially being as close as it is to Gardner Lake. This is something that will be important. We would ask, as a condition of approval, that Johnson County Wastewater notify the City of Gardner if, in fact, a leak is detected, so that we might be aware of the situation and be able to respond appropriately and ensure that the measures are taken to contain anything, if not already done so, by the devices in place. Criterion L refers to the overall staff analysis, again provided explicitly in the staff report. Considering the minimal hazards and risks, staff believes the proposed odor control facility is supported by the stated review criteria and will protect the overall value of nearby properties. It's the recommendation of staff, therefore, that the Planning Commission hold a public hearing and then forward the request and associated site plan for an odor control station on property located at the southwest corner of Lake Road 2 Street and Gardner West Road to the City Council with a recommendation for approval with the following conditions. Condition A, that development shall be in accordance with Exhibit A, the site plan provided, which is filed in the Office of the Planning Commission and incorporated by reference as if set out in full herein. Condition B, that Johnson County Wastewater notify the City of Gardner of any detected spills or leaks. And Condition C, that vehicular access for maintenance and inspection of the facility shall only take place on the designated parking and drive areas.
Great, thank you. Do we have a applicant presentation this evening?
I'm here, Gordon Ramus with Johnson County Wastewater. I'm just here to support this and answer any questions that might occur. Also have the design engineer here with HDR.
Okay.
So if there's any questions, feel free to ask them.
Okay, thank you. seeing this as a public hearing, we'll now open the public hearing. If anyone would like to comment on this item, please come forward and state your name and address for the public record. Individuals are allowed approximately 3 minutes, or if there is an individual representing a group, we'll go approximately 7 minutes.
My name's Kurt Longenecker. I have 2 questions. Is there any sort of air admittance or any air release valves associated with this in this facility? And as I understand, the maintenance on the Lake Road 2 right now is private and done by the homeowners. Will there be any maintenance done by Johnson County Wastewater or the city in regards to that?
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ken Newport with HDR Engineering. I'm the design engineer for the project. Concerning the air admittance or air release valves, there will not be any air release valves that will emit sewer gases at that location. There are others around the lake that are part of the low-pressure sewer system, but not at this location.
It's a chemical injection point only.
It's a chemical injection point only, that is correct. And then concerning question number 2 about the road maintenance, Johnson County Wastewater will not maintain any roads specifically that are either Gardner Lake roads or the county's roads. But they will maintain the property for this odor control station and the parking space there. So that is their plan, is to maintain those facilities.
Well, it looks on the drawing like you will have to use the private street to get to the city.
If you want to show the drawing, actually the right-of-way for the property, for the Lake Road, what is that, Lake Road?
They have a picture up here.
Yeah, can we put the picture back up, Travis? Thank you.
Lake Road 2, the right-of-way line actually extends through the trees to the east of Lake Road 2. That's a dark line on your map. And so the access drive we would have to use the private drive to get to the facility. So that is correct.
Just a little. You just have this little corner section. The right-of-way is the dark line right here. I can't really show it. Can you point that?
Travis.
Yeah, right. Thank you, sir. That's the right-of-way. So you can see we're just basically coming right off of that into that little small triangular section. And part of our easement that we're getting from the property owners allows that entrance.
Again, my question remains, right now, there are several landowners on that road that maintain that road. They buy the gravel, they spread it, they grade it. I would think that as part of this, that somebody would be paying for doing some maintenance on that road for those landowners.
If we end up damaging any of the roadway, we would be fixing it for that area.
So can those landowners count on you guys to put in your fair share on
We're
the
actually
gravel and the grading?
We're actually putting in the gravel or the pavement base there for our parking area, and
Will that all be concrete out to the approach, or
It's a
from your
concrete.
facility out to the approach?
It's a concrete drive access.
but he's meaning this gravel area that is right up in here.
So there's a dark line here that goes through this tree here. That's the right-of-way for Lake Road 2. And then our driveway would be here into it. So anything we would damage out here, they would
I want to make myself clear. There's several landowners on this road that maintain that whole thing and buy the gravel and maintain it. There's 6 houses, but not all of them participate. Or will you guys be participating with any of that annual maintenance and gravel for that road as a help to those citizens that are allowing you to put the odor control station?
That has not been addressed.
Address it.
I mean, look at the area that we're looking at, we're talking maybe 16, 20 feet. Which is, the rest of, what's west of that, northwest of that, right-of-way line is, public right-of-way. So, I mean, we're not looking at that much area, so the odds of damaging that are very slim going through, or the percentage of all the way going around. Not sure of what you're looking at for a figure, or saying 1/20th of the cost, or.
Well, yeah, just their part of that, because everybody else has to pay for that, that uses that road.
What type of number are we looking at, sir?
Well, I don't represent that.
I mean,
I own 2 of the houses right down the street from that, and we have to put in every year for that, the maintenance for that road. And I'm just wondering, will you guys be providing any of that or putting into that to help maintain the road? That's my question.
That has not been addressed, no. So as of right now, I can't say that we have.
Can I ask the city council to address that, and to maybe address that issue?
That is something we can continue with discussion. This is just public hearing right now, so we're here to hear from the public what questions and comments you have, and so that will be, noted as part of our discussion with additional questions and comments is, what you guys bring forward from the public, that's something we need to hear and understand as well, and perhaps that may raise a question for us for additional clarification.
Is there any paperwork or anything that needs to be further done as far as addressing that issue?
I don't know anything as to further paperwork. What we have before us is a conditional use permit application that we'll have discussion on. We currently have 3 stipulations set out in the current recommendation. As we go through discussion, that may come up as a question or additional comment from someone in the commission, but I don't know that. We haven't got there yet.
Okay.
We're at the point right now, we're just taking public feedback to understand the concerns, questions that the public has, so we can put that into our formal recommendation or denial. We haven't even got there yet.
Okay, great, thank you.
I move that we close the public hearing. I don't think there's any.
I'll second.
We have a motion to close the public hearing made by Lavella with a second by Limer. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries to close the public hearing. This will now be time for planning commission discussion. Anyone have comments, questions, or would like to discuss the item further?
I have a question. Travis, when you say that the chemicals are assumed to be non-hazardous, what does that actually mean? I mean, are they hazardous or aren't they hazardous?
If you refer to the reason for request that was provided by Johnson County, it is in the 5th paragraph. It's stated that it is not a hazardous substance and is not harmful to the environment.
Study.
Okay.
I have a question. What was the selection criteria in this particular parcel of land? Just me and in my simple thinking, it seems like you would want to have the sanitary station location already in place before deciding on, a method to control the odor, or maybe it doesn't matter. I just don't know. Just asking for clarification.
The particular chemical that we're using here has to have a certain amount of residence time within the sewer, and then we also have to have a certain amount of flow that goes with it to push it down the pipe. And so the actual pump station that is going to receive the wastewater is on the east side of the lake. And so there was an amount of time that we calculated for the chemical to work in the lines and to affect the air release valves along the way. And so we looked at worst case scenario flow wise for the chemical use and what we needed to pump into the line. And so it's based on determination of that information with the supplier of the chemical to determine location of the proposed odor control facility.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, that does. Thank you. Anyone have other questions, comments, or?
I think that the gravel road maintenance is an interesting, because would this road not typically have, I assume that the maintenance is some sort of big truck that may be heavier than like a regular car just traveling on that road. So I just wondered, as far as like if staff had any recommendations with maybe I mean, we don't know what the cost would be, but I could see that point of, even if it is a small piece, if it's like a diesel truck every time, you know, maintaining it, that it would have some wear and tear.
That was my question too, as well as, is this the arena that we deal with that?
We're asking for
No.
staff input.
Who said the answer to that?
Kind of like a three-part question.
Yeah.
So was the I missed the beginning because Mike and I were chatting.
I was just saying, because it is I think it's a gravel road.
Mhm.
So my first question is the maintenance vehicle a truck versus, you know, a small family car? So yes, then because it is a gravel road and it is held by residents, you know, how do you go about finding a compromise to, if there was wear and tear? And then the third question was, is this the right arena, and how do we address it?
Yeah, I think it is appropriate to take up those considerations now. I guess the first issue that I would ask, and I was talking to Travis and Mike about this, is, and I would request the applicant to comment on this, and maybe the gentleman in the audience, whether they have acquired, whether the individuals who are granting the property right here, whether everyone's in agreement that they have a right to use this private road in question or not. Because if it's a private road, then typically there's, you know, an easement granted for specific individuals to use that, and the scope of the use of the private road is defined by, oftentimes by an access easement agreement. So I don't think the city has that documentation in our files, and if the applicant has information relating to the right of the property owner to use the private drive, or if the gentleman who brought the issue up has any information on that, we would request that information at this time, would be the first question. And then we can, once we get that question answered, then we can maybe address the issue of the scope of the use, and whether, you know, it's fair to request the applicant to provide contribution to the use of the private drive. So,
can I just add something to that really just quickly? Does the commission understand which property owner is granting the easement, where that property is located? Because I think that is potentially confusing. Does the commission understand that?
Maybe not.
No, I think maybe we don't.
Do you have an aerial on your slide where you can show, this aerial here, where you can show which property owner is granting the easement?
What is,
Right, that's not
no.
So Travis is going to bring up a map. I think it will help you understand the issue about the access. If you know, to me, it's not entirely clear from the presentation that's been given who is granting the easement. But I think that's important.
I'd agree.
To understand the issue and
information. We like that.
So, Madam Chairman, just looking at this map, at least in looking at this, I'd forgotten which property owner, myself, I'd forgotten which property owner was granting the easement to Johnson County Wastewater. And I think it's important to understand that. These are two separate parcels, but this is the property owner that owns this, and they're granting an easement to Johnson County Wastewater for this area here. So, it's incumbent upon the applicant at this point to answer this, I believe. They know where their easement, they know what the easement entails, and they should be able to answer the rights this property owner has to using this private drive. I mean, presumably they have rights to use this drive here, and so therefore, under easement, there are also rights to use that drive. But that, I think, needs to be addressed by the applicant.
I'd agree.
I guess I'm trying to figure out the question exactly that you have there. We've accessed or obtained an easement from the property owners that actually own, they actually own the two homes that are right there.
Am I pointing to one of them?
That's one of them. They also own the other one right above it, right there, and they also own this property that's down there.
This property?
Yes, correct.
Right.
Right. They own all that property there, and that's who we obtained the easement through.
Okay.
And they're actually in the audience today.
Okay.
And I don't have the copy of the easement with me, but it is filed with the county for that area.
So I think that there's a certain amount of rights that inure to this property owner by way of having rights to use this access. Not for me to say this, but to what extent do those rights carry over to this easement?
Yeah,
Would you say that's the issue?
Well, that's certainly one of the issues. And I don't know, was the easement that was granted to access, I mean, was it specifically defined that you would have the right to access that private drive there?
Right, the property, typical
Okay.
Typical easement verbiage is rights to build, maintain, and access the given property to maintain everything. And so that's just the general verbiage. I can provide, tomorrow when I get back to the office, I can email the copy of the easement to the gentleman here. And then they could forward it on to whoever needed it.
Right. I think that answers my question. I was under the understanding that it was a different property owner that owned that parcel, from my conversations with staff. I doubt there's anyone in the audience that has questions as to the rights of those two property owners to use the private drive, is there? Right.
And we also obtained a private easement that goes all the way around through the properties around there for the pipeline.
Okay.
That goes all the way around those properties.
The only other question I would have would be, is there a private easement that defines the right of use of that private drive, but as between the landowners? Does anyone know the answer to that question?
We don't know.
Okay.
We usually do an ownership and encumbrance report on the property, and I'm sure we did on this. If there's one that exists, then they should have been in that report, but I don't know if you're aware of the properties out there. It's real difficult to determine what's where and where it's
Okay.
supposed to be.
And the reason I'm trying to answer the planning commission's questions, usually if there's an agreement of that nature, there's a kind of a anticipated scope of use of the drive, and whether this
Sure.
scope of use is within the scope of use that's granted to these two landowners, and accordingly they would have the right to grant to someone else.
Totally understand.
Yeah. Because this seems like a heavier use of a private drive than would typically be taken
Well,
by a
let me
residential.
go back and kind of correct something that was said earlier. We wouldn't be filling this station every week. The only maintenance would be just to check the pumps on a weekly basis. And so the truck that actually would fill the station would probably come once every 3 months at the most. It just wouldn't take that much chemical to.
Is there a different truck that will come?
It would be a different truck that would come to
So
fill
the fill truck
station.
would be a bigger, heavier one?
And it'd be a bigger, heavier.
And the more typical one would be something smaller?
Pickup truck.
It would be a pickup truck,
okay.
a regular pickup truck, so
Okay.
I did want to clarify that for you.
Well, unfortunately, I think in trying to answer the planning commission's question, I think without, at this point in time, from my perspective, without kind of the underlying document as to the permissible scope of the use of the individual granting this interest, it's unclear to me whether there could be a demand upon an expanded use, what may be deemed to be an expanded use of the private right to use that drive than what was anticipated in the original agreement between the property owners. Ultimately, I think from the city's perspective, the question before you is whether a conditional use permit is appropriate, but I think, you do want to make sure this loose end would be tied up.
Doesn't sound like we can tie that up tonight,
Yeah.
correct?
From my perspective, some additional information would be helpful, unless everyone in the audience, including the individuals who commented, are satisfied that the scope of the use that's being discussed is
I feel like in the past, we made a condition that the applicant would work with the city staff to come to an agreement for that a couple of meetings ago. I'm trying to think of what that was on. It might have been with the fence, with
Uproot market.
the market, yeah. And we kind of came to the conclusion that we felt like they would be able to come to terms too. Is that appropriate here or not?
It's a little different situation because that didn't involve an easement. And this involves, you know, the rights between two property owners, where that was more an issue between the property owner and the city. I think that, you know, this all goes back to the criteria that's used to approve the conditional use permit. And I think that if it speaks to any of these criteria that, well, one of the criteria is the extent to which approval of the application would detrimentally affect nearby properties. So if this is so significant that it changes that finding, then it kind of leaves this open to question. I think perhaps the gentleman spoke earlier, that testified earlier during the public hearing, can, with this knowledge, can address that. If he feels like this is a concern that's not fully addressed.
The only other thing I would say, I guess, is maybe the gentleman in the audience can address this. I mean, it seems like the only requests from the surrounding property owners are that they participate in, you know, re-graveling every now and again. And if you know, it seems like a rational condition that you might attach to this, that they participate in a pro rata basis in the upkeep of that gravel drive. That would seem like a reasonable resolution where we could move this through tonight, and perhaps the applicant might be able to address whether they'd be willing to do that.
The only issue I had with the per grata, or however you want to word it, is how would that be addressed? Are you looking at a 1/20th based on size, or are you looking at length of the entire drive going around there and 1/16th of it? I mean, we're willing to work with the city and the property owners, and we just need to make sure that we're also protecting the, you know, the other ratepayers of Johnson County.
And maybe the gentleman in the audience, how much do you spend annually on that upkeep? If we could put a dollar figure on it, I mean, that would seem easiest maybe.
We usually buy 2 to 3 loads of gravel per year, and then one of us with a machine capable goes out there and spreads it around.
Okay.
So we're talking maybe $600 to $800 a year, shared between all the homeowners do not participate with that, but several of us do, to keep the road maintained.
I leave it to the commission. That's just
Yeah.
a suggestion.
Thank you for the suggestion, the feedback. You guys have other questions or comments? We've gotten some good feedback, some good response, discussion.
So there are 6 property owners that participate in paying for that road?
More like 3 or 4.
3 or 4, and you split it
4,
equally?
Most of the time 3. Yeah, I
Equally?
mean, we all just kind of, I usually am the one that gets the gravel out there, and they just kind of retain me, but, you know, I would suggest if Johnson County Wastewater would provide 1 load of gravel per year for it, something like that, and then let the homeowners provide the other load or 2 and the machine.
And the labor?
spread.
Okay. That sounds good.
I mean, we're talking like 1 load, we're talking, you know, you're saying you'd buy 3 to 4, and you're talking 1 load, which is 25% of that, yet we're using 16 feet, 20 feet of the road. I mean, is there more of a dollar figure that you're looking at, like?
Well, you can put a dollar figure on the machine,
I mean,
it goes out and spreads it to, there's, you know, significant cost in that too, so.
I mean, 75, typically a ton of rock, like CA5 or AB3, roughly, I don't know, how much is one of your loads?
About $13 to $14 a ton.
Okay.
You're looking at about 17 tons of, so somewhere around 300.
I mean, I'd have to run that through my supervisors.
You guys probably do it cheaper.
And so, I mean, we're willing to work with the landowners. I mean, we're not trying to be hard-headed about everything, it's just we have to document and have to look at, the well-being of everybody. So, I mean, we're willing to work with the property owners and move forward, work with the commission, and how you want to direct us to.
Can you offer a proposal that you would be comfortable with, that we could consider and be able to move on, or?
The only issue
Not
that
put you on the spot.
I know one thing that my supervisor will look at is that we're using a very, very small percentage of the road.
Right, yeah.
Yet we're asking to pay for 25% of it, and they're gonna go, well, is the quality of that fair for the other ratepayers?
Mhm.
I don't personally have a problem
I completely
with that.
understand why you wouldn't wanna pay $100 a year
Yeah.
to use the road. They're obviously looking for something. I
Right.
understand. If this were my property, I would be concerned as well. But what kind of an agreement can we come to move forward tonight? What is it
I mean,
that they could offer you? I mean, it's $25 a year. You know, what are we talking about that they have to have?
I mean, does $75 a year work for something for you? I mean,
Listen, I'm not looking for compensation for that system to go there.
right.
I'm saying that that road has to be maintained by somebody. Maybe the county could just take it over and maintain it.
That one,
But
I
in the
know,
meantime,
that's gone through before.
if you were to get a quote from 3 local construction companies of what they would take to buy 4 loads of gravel, deliver them, and spread them on that road, you're looking at more than just $700 or $800. You're looking at several $1,000s. So when you consider your portion of it, I'm saying you're gonna use it harder than other people are gonna use it, because there is no truck traffic on that at all. I would say a consideration of 1 load of gravel per year would be a decent consideration. That's just, I'm not representing anybody
Yeah,
on
we're,
Lake Road.
yeah, guys, we.
Madam Chair, can I just make a suggestion on a
Sure.
condition?
Please.
I think it's very difficult to come up with a dollar amount or anything like that, or a quantity amount here tonight. I would say that, the condition that would satisfy the concern would be stated something like this: that, the county, contribute a proportionate share based on considerations such as, you could say a fair proportionate share based on considerations such as frequency of use, length of the roadway used, and weight and size of the vehicles using the roadway. That way, we can use that as a rational basis to kind of mediate this outside of this meeting. I think that perhaps that way we could move on, because I don't think you want to delay this, continue this just on this condition. Maybe that's not, but that's just a suggestion.
I appreciate the suggestion. I appreciate the suggestion.
And we could add that as kind of like a 4th point, contingent on the approval.
You could make it, include in your motion to approve with the added condition. And if you want, I can try to draft something for you.
I'd have trouble repeating that.
Yeah.
I have most of it.
I got a little.
Enough to make a
I have
motion.
the county will contribute a fair portion share based on considerations such as weight, size of vehicles, using the roadway, so that's your first 2.
And frequency of use.
And frequency.
Yeah, considering that the frequency of use, I think that's a strong consideration. They're using it very infrequently. So if that's not included, then it wouldn't come up with a fair number. And you don't necessarily have to repeat it. I think you could say, so moved in your motion. Is that okay?
We would entertain a
Or you
motion
just
if there's no
say
additional comment.
With the stipulation, or you can say with the stipulation as suggested by staff.
Yeah.
And we'll make a motion, Council CUP 14-02 conditional use permit for odor control station with the following conditions, A through D. D being the county contribute a fair portion share based on considerations such as weight, size of vehicles using roadway, and frequency of use.
I'll second.
We have a motion made by Gilmore with a second by Limer that we forward CUP-14-02 conditional use permit for odor control station to City Council with a recommendation for approval subject to the following conditions A through B and D as noted by staff. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with all in favor. Next item, number 2, Olathe Ford RV, request for continuance, items A, B, and C. Staff presentation on this matter, please.
Yes, I'm going to paraphrase the memo that we circulated today and we posted to our website today. Under the current subdivision regulations, as they're being interpreted, staff cannot recommend the Planning Commission approve the final plat, FP 1405, as submitted because they do not comply with the regulations as we understand them. The applicant has discussed with staff the potential for a revised site plan with corresponding changes to the preliminary and final plat applications that would render the applications compliant with the subdivision ordinance. We've also discussed a text amendment that would address this issue, which is new business item number 3 tonight, which I can explain in greater detail. We've discussed this with the applicant. The applicant is here tonight. They might have some thoughts on this. One thing that we suggested is that we try to resolve this soon to keep the project on schedule. We want to respect the applicant's schedule because that's important. We want to support their project as much as we can. Also, it would be helpful if you polled the commission tonight to see if they could meet maybe next week in a special meeting, maybe a week from tonight. And that way, if you continue this, you continue to a specific date contingent on the applicant getting us the information that will allow us to proceed.
Anything from the applicant this evening? I guess, just a question.
Just so you understand, we got a time element that's involved here. We're trying to stay on pace. Our business obviously is a summer business, and in order to get that completed and on task next spring, we need to get this thing moving. If we miss this, as I understand it, we could be another month delay to get building permits and approvals and all this. So we need to get this approved as soon as we can so we can get that going and get at least foundation poured and so forth, get this thing up. And we need to be completed really by April 1st, 2015.
Is a week an appropriate time to
Yes.
around
Yeah.
the revised?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a week for our meeting,
Yeah.
and they'll need, how quickly can you turn around revise?
We'll have that to you tomorrow.
Fine.
I understand staff will need time to study that.
Yeah, and if we get plans by end of day tomorrow, we'll have adequate time to review them and have a recommendation ready for you for a meeting 1 week from tonight.
Do we generally need to stick to Tuesdays for planning commission business?
Not necessarily. It might just be simpler for you, but I think that's up to you. I can say that Travis and I will both not be available after Tuesday night next week, because we're both going to a training conference.
I won't be here Monday.
I don't know.
So will we have?
How about you guys?
As far as I know,
Thank you.
my phone doesn't, so I don't really know.
One thing-
I could do, those 2 days are best for me.
The only other thing I'd add, one thing that I didn't, I'm sorry, Madam Chairman.
No.
One thing I didn't even think before, in the few minutes before the meeting, was checking the availability of this room. But, I believe it's available both of those nights. If not, yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, that'd be good.
If it isn't available, that doesn't necessarily mean you can't meet.
Right.
There are other places we can meet.
Maybe 4 or 5.
Well, who can't meet on Tuesday?
That gives us a quorum.
That's fine.
Oh,
So you
okay,
can-
I
so you
thought
can move.
you said she could, but
No, I
she
can't do
can't.
Monday.
She can,
Okay.
oh, okay, well then, yeah.
Tuesday, sounds like a good option.
Tuesday would be the appropriate option, 7 o'clock. You guys can solve them fun.
And if we can't meet here, we can try the library or the senior center.
Okay.
I believe this is open.
We can also meet at Latha Ford RV if you'd like.
Inside an RV?
Right.
The biggest thing out there is an RV.
We got pretty, our buildings are pretty big now.
Motions?
I think we're waiting.
Waiting.
for her to check on the room.
Thank you, guys. Sure we have that available.
Yeah, yeah. You don't necessarily need to identify the place if you want to just proceed with the motion.
Okay.
You don't have to we can just, we'll
Oh,
post it.
as long as,
we'll
all right.
post it anyway.
Perfect.
All right. Then I'll make a motion to table this decision until, meeting next Tuesday, September 30th, contingent upon submission of the information.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion made by Kimsley with a second by Lavella that we, table this item until Tuesday, 9/30/14, 7 o'clock, contingent upon, plans from the applicant. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries with all in favor. New business, item number 3. Initiate text amendment to Gardner subdivision regulations to provide for the division of unplatted parcels to facilitate phasing of one or more final plats as part of a preliminary plat.
Okay, currently, the way the subdivision ordinance reads, our ordinance does not allow the splitting of an unplatted parcel. And this is due to the fact that the way the description under lot splits is written, but also, under the definitions of subdivision. The definition of subdivision leaves it to any land division. So basically, long story short, is any division of land, whether it's a lot or a unplatted parcel, is subject to the procedures of the subdivision ordinance. So I have some slides here just to demonstrate the issue because that might be a little fuzzy. So I use this example from Overland Park. We did a little research. Overland Park has an ordinance, subdivision ordinance that's similar to ours but slightly different. So this is an area. This is a preliminary plat for Highlands Village in Overland Park. It's a preliminary plat that's been approved. It's I'd say it's somewhere between 200 and 300 acres. On the left side of your screen, that's Knoll Avenue, and on the south side, that's Indian Creek Parkway, and on the right, that's Rowe. So they approved the preliminary plat, and they approved initially 2 final plats for those parcels that are highlighted on the screen. Today, if you look at Ames, the light-colored parcels are the ones that are platted lots. They've been final platted. The remaining that are in darker green are unplatted. So, it's our contention at this point that our subdivision ordinance does not allow for that. So, there are some serious consequences to not amending our ordinance. This is an example. I just found this parcel on the, it's actually it'd be the southwest corner of 175th and Clare Road, near the 175th Street interchange, I-35 interchange. And it's 153 acres, it's a single parcel, unplatted. If someone wanted to develop 20 acres of the site, 20 acres would accommodate about 250,000 to 275,000 square feet of retail space. That's like a community shopping center. Think of it as that size, or a couple big box stores. If they wanted to plat just 20 acres and carve it out of this parcel, they would not be able to do that unless they final platted everything. So what the city requires is that when someone records a final plat, they pay an excise tax. The excise tax is used to pay for road improvements and related infrastructure improvements. The excise tax on 20 acres at 20 cents per square foot is $174,000. The excise tax on 153 acres at 20 cents per square foot is $1.3 million. So I see this personally as a hindrance to development if someone was going to come in and develop some ground. And that's what we're running into with the Lake to Fort RV, but potentially other projects